recent weeks, U.S. citizens have expressed a ton of disapproval of government spending. Now, this is coming off the backs of recent news about government fraud, from us funding programs that the United States citizens don't necessarily support, and even funding countries that we don't necessarily align with. Now, the disapproval has gone so far that the citizens have even considered not even filing or remotely paying their taxes. This video is exactly for you. I am going to explain what exactly the IRS will look to do if you decide not to file your taxes whatsoever. My name is Carrington Dennis. I am a certified enrolled agent. Welcome back to my channel. For tax year 2025 and 2026, you have decided that you are not going to file your individual 1040 tax return. What is going to be the first thing that you are going to be hit with or notice? The first thing that the IRS is going to ultimately do now, if they've been collecting tax returns from you in the past, the first notice that you are going to receive is a failure to file notice. That means that on April 15th, you decided not to file your tax return. What is that ultimately going to do? The failure to file notice is going to state that you need to file your return by X date, and you're also going to be incurring a penalty of 5% per month of any unpaid tax that you have, all the way up to 25%. So that's a pretty hefty fine, right? You're paying a penalty all the way up to 25% if you decide not to file your tax return for the next 5 months after the April 15th deadline. That is going to be the first notice that you're ultimately going to receive. Now, on top of failure to file, there's also failure to pay. They're going to assess an additional penalty to you because you failed to pay any amount on April 15th or any amount throughout the year. Now, what exactly is the failure to pay penalty? The failure to pay penalty isn't as crazy as the failure to file penalty, but it is still a penalty that ultimately hurts. The failure to pay penalty is 0.5% per month of any unpaid balance, all the way up to 25%. So essentially 0.5%. It's not anything too crazy, but again, it still can compound over time and get all the way up to 25%, which is the upper limit, the same as the failure to file penalty. So those are going to be the main penalties that you are immediately going to be hit with, and you're going to receive notices because of it. You're going to receive at least 2 notices with the failure to file penalty and the failure to pay penalty. The next one, or the next notice that you're going to receive, is stating all the interest that you now owe on the tax that is still outstanding. Now, what exactly is the interest rate that you're going to pay, right? The interest rate that you're going to have to pay is the federal interest rate plus an additional 3%. Now, the federal interest rate, that fluctuates from time to time, but it's going to be the federal interest rate plus an additional 3%. And here's the real kicker. That doesn't compound monthly. It doesn't compound yearly. That one compounds daily. It is daily that one is compounding. So that can stack up extremely, extremely, extremely fast. Now, if by any stretch of the imagination you decide not to file your tax return, but you know what, you regret it and you say, you know what, I'm just going to file my tax return late, that's fine. Because if you've never incurred the failure to file penalty, if you've never incurred the late payment penalty, you actually get what's called a first-time penalty abatement, where we can call the IRS and say, hey, you know what, we made a mistake. We didn't know any better. Can you please alleviate these 2 penalties? And they'll go ahead and wipe out those penalties for you. But guess what's staying? That interest. There's no way for us to get rid of any interest that you owe on a tax balance due to the IRS. That interest is going to absolutely stay there. Now, I just went over the failure to file, the failure to pay penalty, and also the interest that comes with it. I'm not done. Now, here's where it goes from bad to worse. Well, Carrington, how does it remotely get worse? I already got hit with the failure to file penalty. I already got hit with the failure to pay penalty, and they're attacking me with interest. How does this remotely get any worse? Trust me, it does. Because if you never file that tax return, what is the IRS going to do? Believe it or not, they're going to file one for you. And they call it a substitute for a return. What does that mean? That means they're going to receive, because another thing that you need to understand is when you receive your W-2 tax form or your 1099, whatever tax forms that you ultimately receive, the IRS gets a copy of them. So they already kind of know what you owe on your tax return before you even remotely tell them, right? So that's number one. Number two, now that they have a copy of all those tax returns, what they're going to do is they're just going to plug it in themselves and they're going to file your tax return for you. The only caveat, what they're going to forget or what they're going to decide to leave out. The IRS isn't going to include in that tax return that they file for you, they're not going to include any deductions, any credits, anything that remotely helps you pay less in taxes out the window. They're not going to include none of that. So basically what the IRS is going to do is they're going to calculate the highest tax possible and say, nope, that's now your new tax return because you decided not to file your tax return. And guess what? You're going to be stuck with that bill, a bill that's bigger than it probably should have been if you decided to file your tax return, right? And give yourself the normal credits that you deserve. Or if you had expenses on your self-employment income, you get to take those deductions. They removed all of that, right? So you're probably going to be paying the highest tax possible. But number two, you're going to be stuck with it. And this is when the notices start, right? You're going to start receiving collections notices. One notice is going to come to your door 1 month. You got to pay this tax amount by, 3 months from now. You don't pay it. Another notice comes in. This is your second warning. You got to pay this tax amount from 2 months from now. Another notice, another notice. And then it goes all the way to the point where it says, you know what? We are going to decide to start to levy your assets. We're going to send you an LT19 notice. If you receive that LT19 notice and you don't respond by the end of that date, what they're telling you is now we have every right under the book to levy any assets that we know you have. And oh yeah, the IRS is friends with the bank. The IRS is friends with any car dealerships or whatever the case may be. The IRS knows what assets you ultimately have. And again, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because I know this, because when they laid off all those workers in the IRS and we thought, okay, this is great, right? No, it wasn't the department. It wasn't DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. It wasn't them removing all those tax professionals so they're not taxing us as much. No, it was them removing all those tax workers because they're implementing AI. AI has the ability to scan different databases, understand what assets that you ultimately have, and come for them, right? So if you don't submit any payments, they send you that LT19 notice and you don't respond to that, guess what? They have every right under the book to start levying your assets. They'll start by garnishing your wages. They'll try to take your home. Our IRS, our Internal Revenue Service in the United States of California, or the United States of America, excuse me, is extremely, extremely combative. If you do not pay your tax, they will absolutely pursue you to the ends of the earth to get what is ultimately theirs, or what they think is theirs, which is their tax dollars. So what you can ultimately do to avoid this, in my opinion, is file your tax return. You may not necessarily agree with what our government is spending their money on. Hell, maybe I don't necessarily agree. But the thing is, I know that at least if I pay that certain amount of tax, and I can always utilize tax strategy to purchase assets that I own to reduce my tax as low as possible, it is extremely possible to get your tax bill absolutely to zero by leveraging purchasing assets and leveraging the tax code to the fullest extent. That's the option I rather take, to not pay any taxes and still buy the assets that I ultimately want and the assets that can generate me more revenue. If you learned anything at all from this video, please drop a like and a subscribe. This video was not to scare you. This video was to educate you. My name is Carrington Dennis. I am a certified enrolled agent. April 15th is now 1 day away. Get ready for that tax deadline. File your taxes, file your extension. See you on April 15th. Bye for now.